You're listening to the Awakened Feminine podcast. I'm your host, 𝐾𝐿𝐼. Welcome. Each week, I'll be chatting with thought leaders from around the world as they share the love and wisdom they've picked up along the way in this journey called life. Whether it be their stories, lessons, tips, or expertise in the field, you'll be sure to get your weekly dose of inspiration and tools on how to lead a soul-aligned life. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Awakened Feminine podcast live. This is your host 𝐾𝐿𝐼, and today I have the beautiful Daniella Princi, who is a holistic psychologist working intuitively in energetics and consciousness. Thank you so much for being so patient and making this work today. We just couldn't get on before, and it's taking us a little while, but we got there.
Absolutely. And like I said, I believe these things happen to show us, the reality of the world around us. So in spite of all the chaos and the distraction and all the interference in technology, we got here in the end, and we stayed grounded and centered and calm for the most part, because I know technology can trigger me. So yeah, it's wonderful to be here again.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm just really excited for our conversation because I know we had a wonderful, wonderful conversation last time you were on. Gosh, I don't even remember how long that was ago, but it was a little while ago, maybe over a year. And I was like, when you wanted to come back, I'm like, yes, this is going to be so much fun. Yeah. I want to ask you, I've asked you this question before, but I know a lot has happened since we last spoke. So what does the term the awakened feminine mean to you currently in this particular point in your life?
Okay, so many things are coming through. So the first thing that's dropping in is really grounded and centered, as the feminine, as the nurturer, as the holder, as the receiver. I feel exactly like what's just happened to us. In spite of external chaos, having the capacity to be really grounded and centered and still hold our truth and our hearts and being able to show up in spite of that, for me at this time, is what the awakened feminine represents, and how she shows up in every day and every moment.
I love that. Short and simple, but to the point, like really to the point. Yes, being grounded, like it was just so interesting, like when we trying to like, okay, how do we get on? But both of us were like, okay, let's figure this out. Like we went on Zoom, then we was like, oh, we can't go on Zoom, and we end up going, okay, how about this? And it works. So it's perfect. So Daniella, this time round, we like in my questionnaire, I asked my guests, okay, what would you like the title of your podcast episode to be? And you wrote Living from the Inside Out. So I really love to actually start with that. I really feel right now in this world, like you were saying, there's so much chaos outside. And I think most of us are programmed to always be looking externally, to living in the external. Like everything we do has to meet the expectation of something external to us. So I really love this topic that you've brought in today, because especially in this moment in time, in these last few years now, it's even more crucial that this is something that we really focus on. So I'd love you to talk a bit more about why you wanted to, share this during our time together.
Sure. And just also coming back to the first question you asked me about what the awakened feminine, and you said that was like a short, I feel this is what it's about. It's this coming back to basics, coming back to simplicity. We've overcomplicated everything. And so, that's the name of my book, Living from the Inside Out, because from birth, we are conditioned and programmed to seek outside, even from a religious perspective, it's going to church, or it's seeking being saved from outside of ourselves. And so it's like, how can we bring that in? How can we connect that within us? It's seeking validation from our teachers and our parents. And so there's all this external, exactly like you say. And more of nothing else that we've seen over the last few years, it's external chaos and external control. So how do we connect with our own inner sovereignty and our own inner strength and capacity to navigate ourselves as we then walk our way through whatever's going on around us? And so for me, that's the essence. It sounds, I mean, it's not simple, but it's simple in that we can't control what's going on around us. The only thing we have control over is ourselves. So how do we learn to, or not even learn, how do we remember the strength and the capacity we hold within ourselves? How do we reconnect with that? Even, from a nature perspective, I was having a conversation this morning about even how disconnected we've become from nature, the teachings, the support, the love of her. And she is us, like, the cycles and all the things that happen in nature happens within us, but we've been disconnected from that. As women, our own personal, like our cycles of our body, we don't live a 24-hour circadian rhythm. We live a 28-ish cycle, 28-day cycle, sorry. And we've been disconnected from that. So can you see it's just coming back to the simple truth of who we are and the workings of who and what we are, and remembering that and loving that and stepping forward in every moment from that space of that aligned, grounded, anchored version of ourselves.
I love that. And so, all right, you talked about,
there was a lot in this.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, okay, where do I start? Okay, when you were talking, what dropped in, the first thing that really dropped in was, okay, yes, we have always been conditioned from birth to look outside and, meet others' expectations. And, okay, coming back in. But when the world is so chaotic, for example, and you're like, okay, this is a decision I've made, and it's completely different to most of the people, in the world. There are people that, think the same as you, but you might not have access to them, or you don't know many of them, but you've made this decision for yourself, and it's going against like most of the population. How does one even, like, as grounded as someone might be, it's very hard to not be distracted or get influenced or peer pressured by the external. So I want that's what came through. So if you are able to talk a bit about holding your truth in the way where no matter how many people outside have a different perspective to you, to still be able to stay in that truth.
So a couple of things are coming through. One that's just yelling at me is, the more we hold our truth, the more our tribe is going to find us. So I don't know about you, but again, over the past few years, the people I've met as a result of the experiences we've all been through are beautiful souls that I would never have met had that process not happened, had I not stood my ground and made my choices. So I just want to kind of put that on the side. But coming back to self and how we navigate ourselves in this, oh, gosh, that is so layered, because it depends on where you're at within your own self-connection as to how firmly you can hold that. Because if you've done a bit of work already and you're pretty confident in yourself to be able to withstand people's judgments and criticisms, you're going to have a better capacity to be able to maintain that path than if you kind of knew and you're still floundering around, okay? But again, I just come back to, it's a choice point at each moment. Like in this moment, how do I feel? How do I feel making this choice and this choice? And that's kind of what I think a lot of people do, so I can follow my dream and follow my decision. Yes, it's lonely, but again, this is where it comes back to connecting to you, like your heart, your soul, because I don't know about you, but I know when I've made a choice that doesn't align with my soul, there's a heaviness or it just feels icky. And so that's what's helped me to maintain my choices and decisions, and even the people I connect with and all the things, because it's like, so maybe let's flip this around, and it's about learning to come back into self to receive your own body's wisdom. Again, something we don't have. So when I've made a choice, or in this example, I've made a choice, this is my choice from my heart and soul, but then people are trying to influence me, I can go there. I can go back and feel safe in these people. But how do I feel inside? How does my soul feel in going back into that space? And just that in itself can help you stand more resolutely in your actual decision, because it actually feels there's like a resistance to that or a repulsion to that now. Does that resonate? And then, so then in that, the other layer I want to add on to that is this is not easy. Like, if this was like, yeah, I'm just going to do this and my life's going to be cruisy, we wouldn't learn, we wouldn't grow, we wouldn't evolve. So in these pivot points in our lives, there's processes and tools to support us. So a process I've learned very early in my journey was, we've changed the name up a little bit, but it started as the transmutation process, and now we call it the ensourcefulness process. But it's a process of allowing me to to experience my emotions and flow them through me, to neutralize them, so I'm no longer controlled by the charge behind what I'm feeling. And so if I make a choice that is kind of putting me outside of the norm, and I feel lonely, I feel rejected, I feel a little bit anxious, maybe, whatever, I can move those emotions through me so that I'm no longer being controlled by them, to then really feel into, okay, now in this neutral space of emotion, how do I feel? And it's like, oh yeah, like my soul feels good. I've stood my ground, Or it might be, actually, no, I might go back here. But it's, every choice point is you're doing it from a place of your own truth and sovereignty, not through external influence, control, distraction, whatever it might be. And I just want to put in, like, a lot of stuff's just coming through. So if it's not making sense and needs to clarify something, please ask, because yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. I know you just get the information as I ask you the question as well.
Yeah.
So when you were talking, what I want to ask is then, okay, people are scared of feeling their emotions. That's just right. So feeling happy, joyful, love, everyone wants to experience those. But when we have to feel the loneliness, the sadness, the grief, we hide from those and we numb ourselves, which then numbs our ability to feel the other emotions. But that's another conversation. How do you get your clients to be able to, like, feel those emotions and pass through and not dwell? Because there's the, okay, I don't want to feel the emotions, and two, what if I feel those emotions and I start dwelling in them and then go down in that downward spiral? And
Absolutely.
So can you talk a bit more about that? Yeah.
And I just want to kind of preface this response with a few things. One, emotions are energy in motion. Okay, so what that means is it's energy moving through us. So yes, 100%. From birth, again, we've been conditioned not to feel our emotions. Don't get angry. Don't show your hurt. Go to your room. Stop crying. Be quiet. Sit in the corner. So our whole lives we do that. So when we feel emotion, it's confronting, it's scary, it's uncomfortable, it feels yuck. So we suppress it. Now, at this time of evolutionary expansion and growth, this is no longer serving us. And it's actually, we can't actually sit in that space anymore. So for people that may or may not be aware, emotions also sit on a scale of frequency. So love, joy, compassion, kindness, they're on the higher frequency, highest end of the scale of frequency. Then you've got anger, hurt, rage, hatred, whatever, is on the lower spectrum. So if we've suppressed those denser frequencies in our body, that's what we're holding in our body. But as things like, we've got the Schumann resonance coming in, there's a whole lot of the solar flares, there's a whole lot of higher frequencies coming onto the planet that our bodies are needing to adjust to. So we can no longer hold that. So a lot of people are being triggered, stuff's coming up. Like it's so interesting. We cannot hide from that anymore. So what I want to say is, yes, we don't like it. It's uncomfortable, but we actually can't avoid it anymore. I think that's all I want to say to start that conversation with. So when I've worked with clients, so coming back to that transmutation process or the ensourcefulness process, it's a process. And I don't know about you, but I don't know if you've ever had like a massive crying jag, and you cry and cry and cry and cry, and you will eventually stop. Yeah. You get to the other side and you kind of numb, and it's like a calm. That is that neutral kind of feeling you can experience. So when I have clients that we do this process with, and I've done this myself, I've had like some ugly cries in my journey. It's not tears the whole lot, but I know like it comes to an end. It can't not. And the power and the relief and the sense of space you feel on the other side of it, even if it's like an hour's worth of crying and carrying on the other side of it it's a relief, for lack of a better word, versus suppressing and holding on to it and getting stuck in it for days and weeks. Because that's what we do when we try not to think about something, or when we try to avoid something. There's that saying, what we resist persists. Like it's there constantly. So it's actually draining our energy constantly anyway. We think we feel better. We think we're, like you said, it actually depletes our capacity to feel those high frequencies because we're stuck there. So when I work with clients, I really do invite them to create the space to feel safe. Sometimes I'll do it with them in sessions. Sometimes they actually feel safer doing it on their own because they're embarrassed to cry in front of me or whatever. But however they choose to do it, there's a process. And the way I learned was I started simple. So every night before I went to bed, I did this process. And I can give you the words of the process, but it's going to be really hard to do the process on this podcast. So I don't know. But essentially, before I went to bed, it'd just be like, what emotions came up? Oh, yeah, I was frustrated whilst I was driving today. That driver was being an idiot. So I breathe the frustration through. And it's like simple, superficial kind of emotions. It's nothing deep. But as I got comfortable with the process, then I was able to like go deep. And the great thing about your ability to do this kind of work is you can actually preempt stuff as well. So I've had clients that have been anxious about an upcoming event. So then I've taken them through the emotion. So imagine you're at this event, this happens. Let's neutralize that emotion so that the charge behind it or the strength of the emotion that they might feel at the event is actually now less than the actual initial experience of it. I feel like I'm like on a tangent here. But I guess what I'm saying, long story short, is whilst it's confronting and scary to feel those emotions, that hour, half an hour, 2 hours of intense emotion is a lot more healthy, beneficial, and easier to manage in reality than suppressing it and kind of carrying it with you. Because the other thing that's happening is, if you imagine each of those emotions like as having it like a hook, and so it's sitting in there. So next time you get angry, the anger moves through you. It then hooks to all the anger that you've suppressed and it brings it all up. So often your response to the situation of dropping a cup of tea, for example, is like this rage, totally unproportionate to what is actually going on because you've brought up all that suppressed anger and frustration. Whereas when you learn to neutralize that in your body, the anger just moves through you and there's nothing for it to attach to anymore. And so that is incredibly powerful in relating, because relationships are our greatest teacher. So when things are like triggered and you can move through it, then it just helps you then next time. None of those past triggers and traumas and wounds are there. And it's layered, so it might take a while. It's not going to just disappear like in one session. Coming back to your own sovereignty and your own empowerment, because you no longer fear emotion. You no longer fear what's happening around you because you can neutralize an emotion within you.
I love that. To actually do this like work before you go to bed, I think that's really good, because like you start the day afresh. Yeah, you clear everything before you go to bed. And as you were talking about things hooking on, like if you suppress the anger, it then hooks it on, and then it brings everything up. And it just reminded me of I think you probably know I went into hibernation for like about a good 6 to 8 months recently.
I think many of us did, yeah.
Yes, I know, because I remember talking to you. And one of the things that came up for me was rage. As you were talking, I'm like, I think I'm meant to like kind of bring this up to highlight a bit more about what you were talking about. And it was like, I still remember that particular day. It just, it wasn't even anything big, but it just made me like, I could feel all my anger bubbling up from beginning of last year. And I was suppressing it and pushing it down because I was scared, because I don't feel angry. 𝐾𝐞𝐞 doesn't feel angry. 𝐾𝐞𝐞's always happy, So I was pushing it down until when I went into hibernation. And then, I think the kids might have triggered me or something. And I just went, okay, girls, mummy's just going into the room, like go into my room, close the door, went to the bathroom. And I just literally, my body couldn't contain it anymore. And I picked up a chair and I threw it. And it broke. The stool broke. And I was like, inside I was like, oh my God, what just happened? Because it was like so unlike me. But after it happened, it was like it just needed an outlet. It needed to just come out of my body. And, I was hyperventilating a bit, and I just had to like make sure I, went back into like homeostasis and like felt calm again. But it was like literally after I threw that chair or stool, it left me and I felt that calm. So yes, the crying also does that, but in that particular moment for me was I had to throw that stool for it to come out.
Yeah, and somatic movement is very powerful for that, like movement. So often when I'm doing any kind of breathing, I like to encourage people to move, because the movement for you, it's like that it's just acknowledging what you're feeling without judgment. So it's like, I am freaking furious right now, and feel it and see it and I've got a friend that does the screaming into the pillow, like whatever you need. But it's like giving yourself permission to witness what you're feeling and just feel it without judgment. Because again, that's conditioning, right? Those emotions are bad. No, they're not. They're just feelings. So allow them to be felt, allow them to be seen, allow them to be expressed, allow them to be witnessed. Do your breath work, as long as you don't then breathe to suppress it again. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes okay, I feel better, but like I really shouldn't be that angry. So I'm just going to like breathe. Okay, let's just get back, So just make sure you just allow the rest of like I see like the tea leaves at the bottom of a teacup, like those little remnants, allow them to be released out. And then, So whatever process you use, it's the same concept of just giving yourself permission without judgment. And then you're modeling for your kids, right? It's okay to be mad, but I'm not throwing the stool at you guys. I'm actually removing myself to process my emotion and letting them know that that's okay.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the shame and the guilt of feeling those emotions, like at the beginning, after, that incident happened, I was like, oh my God, like what the hell happened? And I would have felt ashamed to even share that story, because that's just like, oh, oh my God, you broke a chair, you threw something, oh my God. But now like, because now I'm like, well, that's what happened and that's how it helped me get through. I'm quite happy to share it. I wrote it in my, book as a part of my story recently. But, so it's something that we need to talk about to
Absolutely.
not allow it to be shameful, because then shame's another one of those emotions that,
Yeah. Yeah.
keeps us stuck. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the normalizing the experiencing of emotions. So because emotions aren't bad, it's the behavior we associate with the emotions. So when people are angry and they hurt each other, it's that behavior that's the issue, not the emotion. So however you need to feel and process your emotion, that's what I mean. Like there is so much judgment in the world, and it's that judgment that creates the separation and disconnection. So the more we can embrace and loving, like hold compassion for ourselves and lovingly support ourselves and each other, can you see how it's a completely different lens through which we're witnessing emotions?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And then this question dropped in whilst you said that. um,
Bring
so,
it.
um, definitely, like when you're more compassionate with self, you're more compassionate with others. And I'm all for like unity and bring people together, because I really believe we are all one. However, there are people who like to separate, and there are
Mm.
people who don't see everyone as one. They don't, you're here, I'm there. How do you help people to how can people navigate that when, I'm very compassionate most of the time. I mean, I'm not perfect, no one is. But, when other people, when it's not reciprocated, it's hard,
Mm.
right? When
Mm.
you're like so loving and you're so giving, but the other person's like, they use you for your
Yeah.
compassion and your kindness. How
Yeah.
can then, like, what would then be the process of still seeing those people as one, to not have us divide ourselves from them? Because that, I
Yeah,
think that's very
absolutely.
hard. Yeah.
Again, a bit layered. The first thing that dropped in is we're at a time of sifting and sorting. So I just caution anyone against trying to force anything. If people don't see you as one of their people, if they don't want to hang with you, if they don't want to spend time with you, if they don't want to make the effort to be with you, it's you just walk away. But you don't walk away from a place of judgment. You just walk away from a place of love and compassion. And I see you. We're just on different pages at the moment. That's okay. You do you, I do me, and make peace with that. But in the big scheme of things of what you're sharing, I come back to these last few years, and like I got to a point where I felt broken. I said to my mentor at the time, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot witness humanity destroying itself the way it is. The nastiness that was playing out, it was like it broke me, because I'm also very loving and compassionate. So I did my process. I moved
Mm.
through those emotions. That was a big ugly cry. Um, but what I said from the very beginning was we can't force anyone, we can't change anyone. Coming back to the circle of control, the only thing you have control over is you. So it's how do you show up for those people? So you've got someone that's judging you or saying you're not the same. How can you be the very example of what you say you are and be love and be compassion and see that person? You're not going to have them over for dinner or socialize with them, but you can be like, okay, you know what? It's great that you have that belief, but this is what my belief is. I believe we're all one, and own that and be okay with the fact that not everyone's going to be uh, part of that walk of life. I do feel things are shifting quite beautifully. More and more people are banding together, but we've got to get out of the space of trying to fix change and influence people and each other, because that's just perpetuating more of what is happening in at the greater collective, and just be the example. That's all we can be, the best version of ourselves, be the love, be the compassion, be the full acceptance. And then from that space, show up in every interaction. And
Mm.
people will love you and people won't love you, and that's okay.
Yeah, I love that. When you're talking, I just remembered what I always say to my clients is, be the lighthouse.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 There's no point pulling people in to you when they don't
No.
want to. You just shine your light, and those who
Absolutely.
want to will just come and find you.
Yeah.
And like you
And it
said
was,
before,
yeah, and not on the same kind of level, but I remember when I first started out working, and oh my gosh, there's so many other psychologists, like, and that's another conditioning of this comparison and competition. Am I good enough? I'm not good enough. Am I better than, oh, it's a terrible, like, I really struggle in that energy. Like, even in some conscious communities, I've just had to step out because you can feel that playing out still. And what I've learned over time is I've had clients come to me because of the way that I work, and they want the spiritual, holistic, energetic approach. And then I've had people that have said, no, you know what, that's not for me. And then they'll go and find a more traditional psychologist. And it's being okay with the reality that there, your tribe, your people are for you. And then there's tribe and people for me. And then there's tribe and people for Sally. And like, there's no competition. There is no need to fight and force. It's just accepting that and loving that. Like, how awesome is it that people have this range of supports or friendships or communities? Like, it's what makes us all unique as well as whole together.
yeah, because the world would be a very boring place if we all
Exactly.
are exactly the same. And,
Yes.
I really believe that we're here to experience being human and experience, everything, especially if you're here now, experience everything that's going on in the world and really, you either wake up to be able to discern what, the control and the programming that we've gone through, or you're here to just live out and continue to play into that control and programming. So
Mm.
it's, but I really do feel a lot of, I mean, I have met a lot of people who have woken up, or like people that I probably wouldn't have even thought would like see, are starting
Yeah.
to see, and it's
Yeah.
been very interesting for them to navigate, because it's like, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
How scary would it be, right? Like, yeah.
yeah. And it's so important, like the work that you're doing, and all the women that I speak to on this podcast and people I've met, um, you know, especially in the last few years, because like you said, when you let go of, that conditioning, the right people will come to you. Let go of the
Yeah.
people that don't want to be around you, then the right people will come.
Yeah.
And it's like we need to be here to be able to help the people that are waking up a bit later to
Yeah.
process. Because when I think, maybe talk, if you can talk a bit about that. I don't really know exactly what it, but it's coming in, is like going through life being programmed, right? And you have these set beliefs, like you're so set on believing certain things, right? And then all of a sudden waking up going and seeing that everything that you've believed in is false.
Mm.
How does one work through that? Because it's traumatic and completely like a shift in
Yeah.
everything that like, um yeah, as as you in your professional experience, like, have you had worked with clients where that's happened, where like their whole world has just
Yeah.
switched like completely? And how can people work through that? Because I think this is really important moving through this particular time.
Um, Interestingly, there's a few examples that have popped up. So the first one is my own personal. I was raised in South Africa, Christian, Catholic, all the things. So when I start, and like very judgmental against anything beyond that. And when I started opening up to the spiritual world, I remember having to do a lot of work around making peace with the shifts in my beliefs and all the things. It wasn't as confronting as the current wake ups that I'm witnessing, but even things like in the early stages of the last, like I said, 2020, when I started sharing with a few people what was going on. And I remember someone particularly saying, I can't believe you, because if I believe you, that means that everything I've believed in terms of who's meant to be supporting us is wrong. And I can't. And so I was like, you know what? That's fine. Like, I can't make you. But it was really interesting to see the other side. People weren't not choosing because they fully believed what was going on, but they were scared to open up to the reality of what was going on, right? So, and then recently I've had a client, I was seeing him pre all the lockdowns and everything, and then he actually came to see me a couple of months ago. Oh my word, like completely 180-degree shift in, completely awake, completely aware now. He went down all the mandates and everything, and he just sat there and he was like, I feel like I'm going crazy. Everyone's judging me. Everyone's telling me I'm going crazy. I've got no friends. So, like, he lost everything because of his shift in perspective. And the main thing, so coming back to your question, the main thing that I get out of all of these is needing at least a person, but if not a person, a community that can support you, that can, and it's not for anyone to fix or change or it's just to feel held and that you're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing. Feeling isolated in this journey is really challenging. And like, I live in a town where I don't have a very big friend network. A lot of my friends are actually in other towns around Australia. And so I've really connected to my online community. So whatever works, it's finding your tribe. And I think at this time that means more than ever before. And just feeling held and supported in the changes. I actually dated someone 4 or 5 years ago, and he actually woke me up. But I remember he would share things, and I'd be like, okay, that's enough. You've burst my bubble. And then I'd have to sit with it for a little while, and he respected that. And then when I felt comfortable, I could have another conversation about it and get clarity. And then he would jump in and more, and I'd be like, okay, that's enough. So know also that you have the capacity and the power to control what you receive, how fast you receive it, and when you receive it. Like, you obviously at the moment it's just shoved in our faces, but you don't have to go online. You don't have to talk to people. You can sit with your emotions and the overwhelm and everything. Let it kind of move through you before you're ready to take on the next level and then the next level. And yeah, but looking back, I'm super grateful for those moments of bubble bursting. But not everybody would be. So respect that and honor that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. And I think it's such great advice. Yeah, and I totally agree. It's actually having someone that you feel safe with to, if or wake up and think, your perspectives have changed and your world's crumbling, like your worldview that you had before just started to crumble. Just having someone that you can talk to, finding your tribe, I think is, like you said, is so important because I think for me, when it happened, I didn't have anyone that I could talk to. So it was very much navigating it by myself. And then eventually, I started finding the right people, the right people came to me, I should say.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay, cool. I have people that understand and I can talk to. I'm not going crazy. But until if you don't find anyone, it can be very hard, and then you might then, just to fit back in, try and mold yourself, but then you're kind of like in this middle place where you're like,
you can't. Yeah.
and it's very hard to do that. Because I mean, even sometimes I'm like, this is too hard. I wish I was just like, back there and
Take the other pill
oblivious.
again. Go
Yeah,
back to
yeah,
sleep.
yeah. Go back to sleep, because I mean, by golly, it is like a lot easier. But I mean, I just say that I would never want to ever take
Yeah.
the other pill and go back to sleep. But it is like you say, it's people don't fully believe it, but they don't want to make a choice because, like you said, to know that everything that they believed in was false, that is hard. That is hard to accept. Yeah.
Absolutely. And even in terms of finding your people, there's everyone is so welcoming, but there are still some people or groups of people that are very much in that fight and judgment space. And I can't be around that. For me, like, that's not helpful or conducive to the awakening of humanity at this time. And that can be either people will wake up and be angry and they'll be drawn to that, or they'll need the compassion and support, and that will like be quite distressing to be around. So I just invite your audience or people listening to this that if they are seeking, know that there are different levels of people that will resonate with you and some that won't, and that's okay as well.
Yeah. There definitely is that fight, and I'm like, I just want to be like, help people discern for themselves and not again have that control, because again you're stepping into from one perspective to another perspective, but it's a different type of control. They're trying to control you to think a certain way.
Because it's still playing into that density and separation. Like,
yes.
it makes no sense to me. So
yeah. So I want to kind of go back into so we talked a lot about, really discernment and standing in your truth, and not allowing others to be able to influence you. So we're talking about living from the inside out. So we've talked a lot about the inside, and how does the inside bit reflect out? Yes.
Actually, something just dropped in as you were asking that, so I just want to quickly jump into it. So part of this journey is discovering who we are. So again, your whole life you're told who to be, how to be, all the things. And I'll often get women in particular coming to me and they'll say, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. I don't know what my interests are, and they're completely lost. That's actually one of the main reasons why I shifted the way that I worked, was I realized no matter what diagnosis people were coming to me with, there was this thread of people being lost and disconnected. So part of the living from the inside out, along with, I was there and I'm like, hello. And then it made me update the app and do all these things. I'm like, I think we broke the system. I think our energies just fried it all.
I think so. The frequency is too high, and the content of our conversation is like, stop making those women talk about this stuff.
Exactly. But we're here.
We're here. We're back.
Gosh. I've just got to remember what I was saying. I think I've got it. Living inside out. Okay. Yeah. So what I was trying to say is, part of this journey is just, I want to say, rediscovering who you are. So a lot of work that I do with people, it's, like I said, first of all, like focusing on what's in your control, but then also knowing what are your values, what is your purpose, and not from a like serving humanity necessarily, but your purpose may literally be to feed your family nutritious meals every day. Like, it doesn't matter, but it's like coming back to those basics. Like, actually, what do I enjoy? What lights me up? And really getting to be comfortable with that, because a lot of conditioning, again, has been in particular for women, of giving of self without filling our own buckets. So they're giving, 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 and then you get to this point of being completely empty and disconnected and unfulfilled. And so when we can start to fill our own buckets and to love ourselves and nurture ourselves and move past the guilt around that, knowing that when we're doing that, we can then give more to others. So that's one step in the living from the inside out, because you're living inside, you're filling your own bucket, and then it kind of spills out quite organically. And yeah, and I guess it's already things we've been speaking about, you know, when we're able to show up and hold love for another, you know, that is your love from within and you emanating it out. And that's an important thing I also want to share, is a lot of people want to give, like you'll hear people, oh, I'm sending you love or I'm giving you love. No, it's you hold it in you and you emanate it out. That's how we create, you know, that inside out kind of expression. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question. I guess also, you know, when you are feeling aligned and connected in joy, that shows up. Like I'm just looking around my space and like I've got my plants and, you know, like your space, like things around you just start resonating at the same frequency. I was walking down the street with my friend the other day and I was like, oh yeah, I've done whatever it was. And she goes, woohoo, high five. And we're like high fiving in the street and people around us are like looking. And then you could see them kind of shifting, like, because we were just organically being that. So it's not so much that you have to do anything. It's just being that version of you, being the love, being the joy, being the childlike curiosity, because as adults, we've become so serious and boring. So how can you be childlike? How can you be fun and silly? My poor boys get very embarrassed. But it's about being it. And I remember I had two mentors back in the day and they both laughed at me because they would say, oh, you know, well, like this is what we need to do, let's say. And I'm like, how do I do that? And they were like, no, it's not doing, Daniella, you just got to be it. And it took me a long time because I like to understand in my mind, but I've moved past that now. But it's when you learn to practice that just being, it's such a beautiful, simple, see, coming back to simplicity again, space to be.
Yeah. Everything is simple, but it's not easy. I think that's
No,
the
100%.
distinction. Because if it
Yeah,
was easy, then everyone would be doing it because it's simple. But the thing is, it's
absolutely.
simple, but not easy to do.
Yeah.
So you were talking about, like, you know, the thread was that all the women that were clients, like the thread was that they all were lost because they didn't actually know what they wanted, like, you know, wanted, what they like, and all those things, because it's just got to the point where it, you know, they're just over giving all the time. And you know, curiosity obviously helps us kind of dig in to find out more about ourselves. But the curiosity sometimes also digs up, you know, the things that, you know, might have been buried there. And obviously you've then taught them the process of, you know, doing the emotions. And obviously I know there's more that you do with them. Now, where am I getting with this? There was a purpose to me talking about this. Now, where am I going? I totally lost my train of thought. Like, where am I going with this? I've totally lost my train of thought.
I'll jump in with what's coming through and connecting with what you feeling there and see if it helps. So the journey is not linear and it's not easy. And so in the discovery of who you are, it is going to bring up both the who you are in terms of your gifts, and it's going to bring up the shadow aspects as well. And it's learning to find the gifts in that. And I think the power of that is knowing, like, you know, one of the things I've discovered, I had this really profound, like, solar plexus transmuting. Like, it was so bizarre, but it was really deep and really, but then the next day I woke up and I was like, whoa, like I went so deep and so into the dark. But the next day I was like so much more expanded. And I think I don't know why that wants to be put in the field, but just knowing that we don't have to fear the challenge. We don't have to fear the shadow stuff that comes up, because when we are able to move through it, what's that saying? As above, so below. Like the deeper you go and the more you dive in with support and with the right tools and strategies, then it allows you to grow even more. And it's quite a beautiful dance, really. But yeah, that was just coming through as you were speaking. So I
Yeah,
don't know if that's part of it.
that definitely is part of it. And then I remembered as you were speaking what it was. So I was like, thank you.
Good.
Thank you for saving my lost train of thought. We talked about being. Okay, so like I think our society is like, okay, what do you do? And even you said yourself, like, I didn't understand what being is. Like, what does it mean? And I'm still learning. Like I understand it, but I'm still embodying that being part. Can you talk a bit more about being? Like, how did you really start really understanding what it means and embodying that?
Okay, so what's coming in is I'm riding a bike. So I think what it's trying to share is that it's like practice. Okay, so what I would do, okay, yeah, thank you, is whilst I was washing the dishes, for example, I'd be in gratitude and love, and I'd be like, oh, feel the warm water and smell the smell and like the bubbles, and then be in play and really being, because another thing as a single mom, I remember saying to my mentor, I was like, I don't have time to meditate or whatever. Like, I'm ready. And she said, don't do it separate, include it into what you're doing. So then I was being mindful and present and meditative in my washing dishes. And so it's become like, I love my morning routine. Like, I've got a friend staying, she goes, can I make you a smoothie for you? I'm like, no, I kind of like my process. I've got like my process. And as I'm making my smoothie and my cup of tea, it's just my morning little meditation practice. So I guess it's the practice, but it's how can you layer it into every moment. And so yeah, whilst you're driving the car, being in love and gratitude that you've got your car, and then you'd be like checking out. So I speak to like everything around me. So I'll be out walking and I'll be like, hi plants, oh my gosh, look how pretty this flower is. And so it's like, how can you be, and this comes back to that childlike curiosity and play and joy. Like, it just, when you start doing that kind of stuff, it kind of becomes your being. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you'll find yourself, like, I would be sitting with my kids and I'd just be like, holy moly. And I just look at them and I'd be like, I love you guys. Like, and you just feel this love, like just pouring through just out of random. And they would be like, yeah, Mom, we love you too. You weirdo. And then sometimes I would just, my kids would be a bit off, and I would just sit there and I just emanate love through the house. And it's just being it. Like, it's really hard to describe it now that I am better practiced at it. And it's not like I'm perfect, but it's just knowing that you don't have to do anything. It's just holding the frequency of love and joy and gratitude and just playing.
Mm-hmm. I love
Does that
that.
help?
Yes, definitely. My word for the year is love, and it's this year has been already a constant reminder to come back to it. And I love what you said about bring the meditation into everything you do, because so like you said, like before, like I don't have time to meditate. I'm a single mom, and where do I have time? And I always and for me that's something that I remind my clients as well, because like just what is something that you can do that you are just fully into it and is like the outside world melts away. Some people it's knitting, they might love doing that, or some
Yeah.
kind of hobby, or just walking through the park and being really present as you walk. So I love that you brought that up. And it is that beingness is, it is hard to explain, and like I said, I'm still learning it, nowhere near perfect. But I love that, when you said you are with your boys and you just suddenly feel this like this love coming through. I laugh because I do that too. I'll just all of a sudden be like, oh my god, I love you girls so much. And if they're in, I mean, I have girls, so if they're in the mood, they're like, love you too, mummy, and they'll come. Otherwise, my
Yeah.
older one, she's like, okay.
Yeah. You're nuts.
Like, yeah, not
Yeah.
in the mood for this today, kind of thing. So I really love that you brought all that. But for me, just an example, like when you're not being like, you can be around your children, but you're not being, if your mind is away
You're not
and not
present.
actually being
Yeah.
present. And I mean, I'm totally guilty of that. Of course, and I know a lot of people probably are guilty of that, where they're not present when they're with their kids. It's the, yeah, but once you are present, it's such a different feeling. And I think I had that one time where it was like the switch came on for me, where I'm like, oh, it was like I was seeing my kids for the first time. Like when I started really embodying that presence, I was like, wow, like, I spend time with them all the time, but it was just at that moment where it was like, oh, I see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. But again, I think it's part of the disconnection that's been created in society. So it's like, how do we help to counteract that? Seeing parents on their phones out at cafes and their kids are on their devices. And I'm like, no, like, put that down, interact. My go-to is getting away with my boys. They're teenagers now. One lives away from home. So I don't know how it's going to go, but like really consciously, even if it's for 2 days, just the three of us. And we always have the best time. And yeah, okay, there's devices in the evenings and we're all kind of chilling out, but through the day, we're doing things together. And so, because you can't always be fully present with them in every moment, but the reality is not
Yeah.
that sometimes. So it's like, how do you create pockets of that and just
Mm.
find your way?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely. Oh, thank you. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. I've got a couple more questions to ask you, Daniella, before we wrap up, because I'm just aware of the time. We didn't have anyone
Sure.
join us in the live studio, probably because of our tech issues and everything, but it's fine.
Oh, goodness.
The people that catch the replay, please, share with us what you've taken away from our conversation today. But Daniella, what
And
I
if there's
really
any
want
questions,
to
they can
ask you,
type them in, I'm assuming.
yes, if there's any questions, they can, once I share it across all the podcast platforms and social media, you're more than welcome to ask questions, and Daniella or myself can answer them. So even though the podcast might be completed, we are still there to answer any questions. Yeah. So, Daniella, we talked a lot actually today. So much gold. Like, thank you so much. I love talking to you. I love how you just receive information and share it. And this is what I love about talking to you and the podcast, because it's just instant. Like, this message comes through. Let's share it.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. The question I want to ask you now is, okay, we've talked about so much today, but what is the take home message you want for our audience? Like, what do you want them to take home with them from our conversation today? Or it could be something completely different. Just, what is something you want them to take with them?
Okay, the word fear dropped in. So, what wants to be shared is coming back into our sovereignty and that inner strength of ourselves. fear is the main source of control and manipulation. You know, like we put fear in kids, be good, otherwise, blah, 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 you know. So I just want to invite everyone that, you know, reflecting on the year that the time that's been, the few years that have been, and knowing what's coming. There's a lot of stuff playing out already. And so I invite you, if and when you experience fear, to find a way of stepping out of that. And so for me, it's grounding in nature. So, you know, even imagine roots growing out of your feet, really connecting into the depths of nature, feeling her love and her support, and breathing that up to your heart, and just being really grounded and really present, and knowing that as a collective, as a community, we have the capacity to navigate anything. As long as we don't get, like we said before, with the densities of our frequencies and our emotions, as long as we don't get stuck down there, but coming back to love, when we can ground and be in our hearts and just emanate love, that fear doesn't have the capacity to hold on. And this is not about bypassing, it's not about avoiding. It's like, and this is where having the practices to feel that fear, move it through you, and then come into love can be really powerful. We don't want to avoid anything because that's not serving us. That's just contributing to the suppression of whatever. So whatever density you're feeling, I think maybe that's the main one. Any dense emotions, seek help, reach out, ask. I can't just, like, I wish there was a quick answer, but I need to show you the process to be able to teach it. But there's so many versions out there, but really give yourself the space to feel your emotions and move through them. For those of you that hold deep trauma, I invite you to get support to do this, because you need to be held. Like, it's big. But the more you have the capacity to move through any density that's being thrown at you in the external, that's how you can, like, really stay in your heart and your sovereignty. And this is how we're going to navigate our lives moving forward, I believe.
Yeah, I believe too. So thank you for sharing that beautiful message. And I'm receiving it, and I'm sure our audience will receive it as well.
Yeah.
And Daniella, if people want to find out more about you, or maybe, you know, they want to learn from you how they can transmute that, or transmute, or, you know, let the energy pass through or work with you, where is the best place to find you?
My Facebook, I'm laughing to myself. Well, actually, I'm laughing out as well, because I forget the name of my business page. I think it's Daniella Princi, Conscious Soul Psychologist, is my Facebook. Look up Daniella Princi and the rest of it will come up. And Instagram is Daniella_Princi. Those are probably, like, the main easiest ways to get hold of me. So hopefully that helps. And like I said, like, if you're not sure, just I'll find out how to access this online. So people, you know, please contact me. I can reach out as well. So yeah.
Don't worry, I'll have all your details in the show notes, so people can reach out to you and find you. I will make sure
out, message,
all the
follow.
right links are there. Yeah.
And look,
for
I mean,
sure.
I have bouts of super activity on social media, and then I go quiet into the energies, and my business coaches have always pulled their hair out, but I can't do it any other way. So there's lots of content there, but then you'll see that I've been quite quiet over the last kind of month or so, but I'm still around, so reach out.
Yeah. I totally resonate with your way of being on social media, so I totally understand. And like you said, the right people will understand and they will connect. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much again, Daniella, for coming back and having this wonderful conversation with me. And
you're welcome.
And, you know, being patient with all the tech challenges we've had today. We totally broke the connection today, but we made it. We've had a wonderful conversation, and I thank you so much for it. And until next time, we'll
That's amazing.
connect again. Thank you so much.
That's great. Have a great weekend.